During this module, I've become interested in the black and white image, drawing attention to the photograph as an object, and how this informs a documentary aesthetic and sense of nostalgia in my work connected to community. My work up until this point has been based on established comfort zones built during my time as a freelancer. I found that I was not really challenging my approach to photography. However, portraits are still important to how I approach projects and make pictures. Projects about people are often more successful at finding an audience interested in the work, and when considering the idea of community, identity and connection, people are central. This status quo was fundamentally challenged during the last module, as I was forced to react and consider how to create work without anyone's photograph. This allowed me to approach photography much more conceptually and consider, as Vanessa Winship notes, even when the image does not have a human present, it is always about people in one way or another. Having conducted research on the concept of community, I also wanted to visually represent it and also consider how I place myself into this project. Chroniclers of community have often used black and white to create a sense of nostalgia, which is forever shifting, how we perceive it now versus what we remember of a rose-tinted past. Alex Soth references this in Songbook, where black and white blurs the distinction of reality and the idealistic world. In addition to nostalgia, Willem Flusser points out to us black and white highlights the significance of the image, and Vanessa Winship uses it to contrast the way that we interpret the world in colour. It is also a means to abstract our concrete world, something that all photographs do. However, with black and white, you are also drawing attention to the act of photography. This subtly places me into the image, as once you are aware that this is a photograph, then you are also aware that it has been photographed. This significance of the photograph is becoming more apparent to me based on the reactions of my peers. The qualities of the black and white image create a nostalgic link to idealistic community. It draws attention to the photographic object and also me as the photographer to question the idea of identity and connection. I now feel that this should be a new direction for my project moving forward. To inform this, I carried out a number of experimental approaches in abstraction. For example, my Ed Rusher response was a film exploration utilising multiple in-camera multi-exposures taken during the peak of the lockdown to heighten the surreal nature of this time. I rephotographed my windows to see how similar images would change if photographed in black and white, and I also responded to images created by others as a way to explore the Barthian concept of the community idiorhythmic and how we live in the same spaces but also separately. These images depict the same spaces, perceived in two different ways. I also appropriated negatives onto a new film, effectively creating a photographic object of my own, having never visited the location, in order to play with this idea of connection. In the end, I felt that the most effective method was the simplest. Black and white achieves abstraction, the idea of community nostalgia and connection, whilst also being accessible. The use of black and white film has not been without its challenges. I needed to relearn process to truly understand the qualities and characteristics of this medium. These mistakes have proved valuable in the way that I approach my project. Considering photography as a more precious object, my practice has slowed, is more considered, and become more creative, even with these imposed limitations. I opted for an online exhibition for Landings, inspired by Reneke Dijkstra's Family Portraits series. Online has the opportunity to be seen by many more people over a longer period. It is also accessible to anyone, and under the circumstances especially, seemed the most logical way to display my work. Additionally, there were a number of changes that I was keen to make to my website, including the design of the galleries, the typeface, and the multiple titles that I could not remove or hide. The site was also vertical scrolling and not very responsive when switching between a desktop browser and a mobile device, and could lead to missed opportunities and a poor return in my click-through rate. For Landings, I differentiated further by including a separate homepage for the gallery. The impact of this is to create significance in the display of the exhibition work and separate it from the user experience of the rest of my website. It was also important to offer a zine as a tangible outcome, which I wanted after my exploration into the photographic object. This zine has been produced on newsprint, which creates a link to the location of Watford, where my community is based. The town has a rich history in printing for newspapers and Sunday supplement magazines, so I felt that it was important to reference this in some way, alongside my images and use of colour on the cover. I did also consider other ways of displaying the work within the community, for example local bulletin boards or as large prints on some kind of art trail that would place the audience in the community context where the work was made. This also creates an opportunity to run workshops alongside the route as part of a socially engaged photographic project about communities. I enjoyed the process of creating my zine, yet undecided if I want to move on to books. Photo books can be quite limiting in the terms of the accessibility to audience outside narrow photographic ones. I may instead consider presenting the work as a print collection to link to the photographic object, or postcard sets, offering more flexibility in narrative and presentation. I started this module believing I had a defined sense of how I produce work. I have since discovered the importance of challenging this. Now there is a clear sense of how my work will look from a better understanding of the opportunities and limitations of the medium I have started to use, and I have developed an aesthetic approach to realising the conceptual ideas of community, connection and identity. Much of this new confidence still resides in portraiture, so I must also consider other imagery, which will give my project its sense of place and context. Similar to Brian Schuttmark's short series titled Good Goddamn, which show much more of the human character by tying in portraits, landscapes and details. It has been useful to focus on process throughout this module. As Todd Heido notes, craft is important to be able to effectively realise your ideas. Moving forward, I aim to develop my research into community and move my practice into more personal aspects, focusing on Gemeinschaft, those emotional and personal connections to family. Thank you for listening.